Gender equity to me is the vehicle for achieving gender equality. Gender equality is looking at getting equal opportunities, equal representation, just sort of an equal playing field for both genders and all genders. But gender equity is the way that we get there. We need to look at what we can do to make things equal on both sides, and the mechanisms to achieve that might be different for all parties. I think gender equity is definitely an issue in Bendigo, but more in the sense that gender equity is an issue everywhere. I think that there's a lot of people fighting the good fight for gender equity, and we really need to acknowledge that gender equity is good for everyone. I think I've seen a lot of subtle move towards and subtle improvements in gender equity, and the main one is having a conversation. What it is, it's being transparent, it's looking at what we can do to make sure that no one's feeling awkward about saying certain things and doing certain things, but also taking the moment out to call someone out if there's something that's not quite right with gender equity, or if someone's imposing a gender role, or if there's anything like that. It's mainly about conversation and transparency. I think what we can still do is keep having those conversations, and in our respective roles, making that stigma around gender roles, making that stigma around what's traditional for each gender, what's traditional for careers, and really eliminating that and addressing those differences. I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of making things gender neutral, in terms of making sure that all genders feel comfortable going for different roles, going for positions, and just genuinely being in the Bendigo community. I think the scariest thing about this question is that I don't know, and that's the problem. So I think that a lot of conditioning when it comes to gender, when it comes to stereotypes, is things that are so normalized nowadays that we have no idea that it's actually happening. So it comes through, the stereotypical things we know about, which is, children's toys. It comes through, looking at what careers are suggested to each gender. I think for myself, there's nothing that I could per se name in terms of something that's individual to me. It's more just general things that happen all the time. So it's looking at, what has been thrusted towards you because you're a certain gender, what has been taken away from you because you're a certain gender. Are there certain emotions that are, encouraged in females as opposed to males? Are there certain traits that are discouraged depending on gender? I think that's the introspective question that we need to keep revisiting. I think there's opportunities I would approach differently, and opportunities that might have been easier to approach and easier to get to. I think something that's definitely impacted on me when it comes to gender stereotypes is what traits are traditionally valued in women and what traits are traditionally valued in males. So one thing that we definitely see a lot of the time is adversarial traits. So it's being argumentative versus being assertive. And which one of those words, gets a positive reaction and which one of those gets a negative one. And those are traditionally associated with different genders. I think that I would have picked the same path, but again, the road to get there might have been a bit different. I think that, we're slowly moving away and becoming more aware because of those transparent conversations that there are these gender stereotypes, and that we're looking at, how can we ensure that, male-dominated fields and female-dominated fields are slowly, dispersed into equal fields. There usually does come a preference with smaller things such as, stereotypes that, males prefer to work with their hands, so they're going to go into trades, or females, feel like they want to sit at desks, so they'll go into, legal careers, or they'll go into, desk jobs. And I think that, it's one of those things where both genders are going to benefit if we can get rid of these roles, because it creates freedom of choice for everybody. I think it's a really hard question, because I've had a lot of role models in my life and a lot of champions. One that definitely springs to mind is a university mentor that I had, who, for me, I think that inherent to females a lot of the time, and especially in youth, is this sort of self-deprecating humbleness that we're taught to have, where we don't talk about achievements, we don't talk about positive traits and what's good about ourselves because we don't want to come across a certain way. After meeting this certain role model in university, I was taught how to, frame myself in a way where I can be proud of my achievements and not make myself small, but also go for achievements that I feel like I deserve, and sort of progress my career in that way. I think there's heaps of people fighting the good fight in terms of role models for younger girls today. They're everywhere. They don't have to be, someone that you see on TV, someone that you see, doing these big, amazing things. It could be anyone in your local community. I often think of the people that I see, just working as I walk along Bendigo. When I see people working their jobs, when I see people taking care of their kids, when I see people living their life the way they want to live them, I think that's the ultimate role model we have when people have this freedom of choice. Life would look very utopian, I think, in Bendigo if we had complete gender equality. And gender equity itself, it's about everyone having choice. And I think that's a really great thing. But what it would look like would be more conversations about what we do, about what we're getting, about benefits. There'd be less shame and less ego about, what we're doing, and that sort of need to one-up each other, I think, would go away, because people have the choice to, indulge in what they choose to do based on their personality rather than, things that bind them externally. But I think that conversations like this would be more prevalent, but also conversations like this will be more normalized. We won't wait for an opportunity to talk about gender equity. We won't wait for a campaign. We won't wait for, an opportunity where we have to discuss it. It'll be just a normal part of conversation. I think the change that I hope to see is the normalcy of discussing benefits and the normalcy of discussing salary, of discussing jobs, and mainly for both genders and all genders is seeing, what we can do to make sure that no one feels like they're bound by something they don't wish to be. So it's looking at, when we look at career days, we're not looking at particular people in those roles, and we're not reinforcing these, unconscious bias stereotypes of different careers. We're, throwing careers at everybody and telling everyone that they have an equal shot at getting them. It's promoting traits that are positive in every single person. It's not promoting traits that are only inherent to certain genders or seen in a positive way for both.